Have you ever noticed how a simple smile can change someone's entire face? For some people, when they grin or laugh, tiny indentations appear on their cheeks like little dimples pressed gently into the skin. They seem playful, almost like nature added a small decorative detail to a person's expression. Some people have one dimple, others have two, and some never develop them at all. For centuries, people have found dimples charming, even lucky. But have you ever wondered why they exist in the first place? Today, we will uncover the curious science and history behind those tiny smile marks, right here on History of Simple Things. Dimples might seem like a small cosmetic detail, but their story actually begins deep beneath the skin, in the structure of our facial muscles. The most common type of dimples, the ones that appear on the cheeks, are linked to a muscle called the zygomaticus major. This muscle plays an important role in smiling because it pulls the corners of the mouth upward. In most people, the muscle forms as a single continuous band running from the cheekbone down to the corner of the mouth. But in some people, the muscle develops differently. Instead of one continuous strand, it splits into two separate bundles. When this happens, the skin above the gap gets pulled inward when the person smiles, creating that small indentation we recognize as a dimple. So in a way, a dimple is not something added to the face. It's actually a small variation in muscle anatomy. When someone smiles, the split muscle pulls the skin in slightly different directions, creating a little hollow in the cheek. When the face relaxes, the indentation often disappears or becomes barely noticeable. That's why dimples seem to appear only when someone smiles or laughs. Interestingly, not all dimples are exactly the same. Some are deep and obvious, while others are subtle and faint. Some appear symmetrically on both cheeks, while others show up only on one side of the face. These differences usually come down to how pronounced the muscle split is and how the skin and fat layers sit above it. Even small differences in facial structure can change how visible a dimple becomes. Dimples can also appear in other places besides the cheeks. One well-known example is the chin dimple, sometimes called a cleft chin. This type of dimple has a completely different cause. Instead of being related to muscle structure, a chin cleft happens during early development in the womb when the two halves of the lower jawbone fuse together. If the fusion is slightly incomplete, a small groove or indentation remains in the chin. Unlike cheek dimples, chin dimples are usually visible even when the face is relaxed. There are also rarer types of dimples that appear on the lower back, sometimes called Dimples of Venus. These are small indentations just above the hips and are related to the underlying bone structure and ligaments in that area. While they share the same name, they aren't related to the facial dimples that appear during a smile. Another interesting question people often ask is whether dimples are genetic. In many cases, they do seem to run in families. If one or both parents have dimples, their children are more likely to have them as well. For a long time, dimples were described as a dominant genetic trait, meaning that inheriting a single copy of the gene could produce the feature. However, modern research suggests that the genetics of dimples are actually more complicated than that. Rather than being controlled by a single gene, dimples likely result from a combination of genetic factors that influence how facial muscles develop. This complexity helps explain why dimples sometimes skip generations or appear in someone even when neither parent has them. Genetics often works in subtle ways. especially when it comes to physical traits shaped by muscle structure and facial anatomy. Another curious detail about dimples is that they can change over time. Many babies are born with dimples that become less noticeable as they grow older. That's because infants tend to have fuller cheeks and thicker layers of facial fat. As a child grows and their facial structure changes, those early dimples may fade or disappear entirely. On the other hand, some people develop more noticeable dimples later in childhood as their facial muscles mature and their smiles become more defined. This shifting appearance is one reason dimples have always carried a sense of mystery. They seem to come and go, appearing only when someone smiles, almost like a secret hidden in the face. Beyond their biological explanation, dimples have also played an interesting role in culture and beauty standards throughout history. In many societies, dimples have long been considered a sign of charm, youthfulness, or friendliness. Because they appear during smiles, they naturally become associated with warmth and approachability. A person with dimples can appear as if their smile has an extra spark or personality. But from a scientific point of view, dimples are simply one of the many small variations that make human faces unique. Just like freckles, eye color, or the shape of a nose, they're the result of subtle differences in anatomy and development. And perhaps that's what makes them so fascinating. A tiny split in a muscle, something you'd never notice beneath the skin, ends up creating a visible feature that people have admired for generations. It's a perfect example of how something simple, like the mechanics of a smile, can carry both biological complexity and cultural meaning. Next time you see someone laugh, and those small indentations appear on their cheeks, you'll know there's a quiet story hidden in that moment. Beneath the skin, tiny muscles are working together in a slightly unusual way, pulling the face into a shape that humans have come to recognize as charming and expressive. Thank you for watching. If you have suggestions for our next video, feel free to share them in the comments below. We'll be sure to give you an acknowledgement for your contribution. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of simple things. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories woven through the smallest details.